Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info coming at you after the conclusion of the Indy road course race. What is it even called anymore? It's no longer the Brickyard 400, the Verizon 200, I believe. Won unofficially by our good buddy Tyler Reddick, his second road course victory, after his first career victory at Road America, ending a streak of three straight first-time winners on the road courses, and ending a streak since 1988 of a first-time winner claiming a Cup Series win on July 31st. And we'll get more into that as well. Although it wasn't too far off that we could have very easily had that. Some career runs out of both Harrison Burton and Todd Gilliland really added some added complexity to the finish of the race that was already complicated by a mix of strategy and just downright chaos there at the same time. So a little bit of everything for everybody here, and not the least of which being well, a mix of broadcasting decisions and camera angles, and LASTBRO is still trying to figure out what happened to Daniel Suarez on the last lap. I know he was involved in one of the incidents at the end, but the unofficial results show him about the tail end of the lead lap, where Ross Chastain ultimately ended up. So kind of an interesting scenario going on back there. Kind of hard to really tell exactly where to start on this one, but we'll certainly get into that. Let me know if you're having any issues on the audio on here. We have the setup that I wasn't able to get working last week. I have it hooked up here. I could hear it on this, and it sounds like it's okay. But if you're having any issues, definitely let me know, and we can work around that as well here. But yeah, a lot to definitely go over here for the race here. And as I mentioned also, I mentioned this in the chat here as well, happy birthday to LASTBRO. This is his birthday today. And also, which is interesting, he got a real kick out of finding out about the whole George Jetson thing that was making the rounds on Twitter this week as well there. So let's go into the action right away here. So unofficially, your race winner, Tyler Reddick, his second career Cup Series victory. This now his first win after declaring that he'd be driving for 23XI Racing next year. Austin Cindric in the second spot, easily his best run since his Daytona 500 win this year. I kind of thought at first that he was one of the other drivers that cut off that corner there at the very end, but nope, he apparently kept it between the corners there and pulled off the victory, second place run there, not the victory for him. Harrison Burton in the third spot, career best for him, probably the best he's looked since some phases of the Clash back earlier this year, and qualifying at Daytona before he had the flip at the 500 that kind of seemed to set him back a bit. And Todd Gilliland taking the fourth position for Front Row Motorsports. Very rare to see the 38 team finish ahead of the 34, especially with McDowell loaded for bear on these road courses and trying to punch his own ticket in the playoffs. Todd Gilliland was very good in the top 10 towards the end of this race, getting up to the 8th spot there after the first overtime, and then ultimately climbing up to the 4th position. Bubba Wallace in the 5th spot there, talk about 23XI, and a great turnaround for him. Finally getting a good run, and on a road course, no less. Bubba was very good at Indianapolis on the oval, even when he was driving for the Petty team. But it's good to see him get a good finish out there in the number 23 team there as well. Joey Logano was very physical at the end of this race, hopping the car off the curbs to get through turn one there at the end, ended up smashing into a couple of other drivers, but he was able to come out the other side of that in the 6th spot. AJ Allmendinger, some very serious heat exhaustion on his hands there, as chronicled by the broadcast, where he was without fluids really for the entirety of the third stage, and a cool suit that wasn't working. And those cool suits are really thick with the devices that have to work there. If the suit's not working, you're basically just wearing an extra layer of clothing that's not going to be very breathable on a very hot track there. And we haven't really heard as much about issues with the heat with this particular car, since there had been advancements like the slits in the rear glass and so forth to try to make it a bit easier for these drivers to deal with the hot temperatures that they have from one race to the next. And certainly at the end of July, it looked like a very hot day from what they were showing on the broadcast, and that had a factor in how the cars were sliding around during this race as well. But very, kind of scary situation there. Reminds me of what situation with Cody Ware back at Sears Point, or then even further back, Ricky Rudd's situation in Martinsville in 1998. Absolutely, clawed his way through there. Still got the 7th place spot, even with the incident with Ryan Blaney on the final restart there in the first corner. Good recovery there for the guy who won on the Saturday race there. So hopefully he's doing okay. We'll see if we get any other reports on that along the way here through social media or whatnot. Michael McDowell in the 8th place finisher. Cole Custer at a spin came back in 9th. And unbelievably, looking at the results here, I didn't notice this in the initial rundown. Chris Buescher showing in the 10th spot. And this leads us very well into our discussion of the last place battle. Chris Buescher was a very big factor in finishing last in the Cup Series race here today. The situation with the number 17 catching on fire, which usually is something that ends a driver's race for the day. My understanding is if there's something that goes off with like the fire extinguisher in the car, you're done because they can't recharge those fire extinguishers along the way. I don't know if that's changed with the next gen car, but that was my understanding with at least the older generation cars. We saw situations with fire in the cockpit, even really with in the Truck Series race this week with Spencer Boyd in his last place finish earlier this year. I was very surprised to see Buescher continue to come back out there when he couldn't see in the car. There were descriptions where he was talking with the team. The team didn't seem too overly concerned about the fire, which I wasn't sure if I could attribute that to just the team staying very calm under pressure, or if it was a situation where, they were just trying to, where it wasn't really a big deal. Because one way or the other, Chris never got out of that car. He just kind of stayed in that and was trying to get the best run that he could along the way there. And, ultimately, of course, at least in the looking at the results here, it certainly paid off for him in that sense. But, very surprising because he got back out there and there were reports, over the radio, he couldn't even see to his right. And to track like this where, again, you're finding yourself in the middle of traffic, people spinning this way and that, I think it's practically impossible to have the spotter walk you through everything here at the same time too. But didn't turn out to be the situation here with him, at least, able to claw his way back out from the back of the field. But they had to do some very creative means to get a lot of the, after the fire was out, then they'd get all the fire extinguishing material out, using blowers and air compressors and everything else to get it out of there. Took at least 2, maybe 3 pit stops for them to actually get that figured out. Kind of a crazy situation you don't typically see too often. But regardless, great recovery for Chris, getting that 10th place finish ahead of some, high-powered entries there. Kyle Busch was behind him, and Denny Hamlin and other drivers that, to their to be fair, had issues of their own at the same time there. But a remarkable recovery there, especially since Buescher was second back at Sears Point just earlier this summer. Still very surprising, but I think the one thing to really take away from that too is, the protocol when it comes to NASCAR and handling those situations. Because what if the fire started back up again, or what if it, if they extinguished it but it was someplace else? Could have been a very serious situation, as you can see with the Spencer Boyd's incident and the others. Those seconds matter for sure. We've already had a couple concerns about the next gen car these last couple weeks. Of course, Kurt Busch's accident over at Pocono, and the discussion about lower speed impacts being really severe in terms of how much energy the driver's body absorbs in the incident. There's been flip sides of that as well. The most serious accident that we saw during today's race, with the situation where Kyle Larson and Ty Dillon collided in turn 1. Larson, with what clearly seemed to be a brake failure there, just completely out of control going into turn 1. The 42 car just the wrong place at the wrong time, exposed his broadside right when the 5 car came into the corner, and just slammed door to door there and just utterly knocked the right side of the 42 car to pieces. Good to see both those drivers get out of the car, and Ty didn't seem too much, worse the wear there, at least from the first reports there. So it seems like, at least again, it kind of seems to affirm kind of what we were talking about with the Kurt Busch discussion. And I think this was all referencing the discussion that was on Door Bumper Clear, was that, the lower speed impacts are the more serious ones, that the cars are at least still robust enough that at high speed impacts, the drivers are able to climb out okay. I know these are a couple of drivers that are the younger competitors out there, but still, again, it was good to see that they were able to get out of what was a very sticky situation there that dropped them both into the bottom 5 at the end of this race. Ultimately, the last place finisher of the race was Eric Almirola, unofficially his 15th last place finish, his first of the season. He was actually in contention for the LASTCR Cup Series championship last year with a very difficult spring and early summer run in the number 10 car. As he's noted, this is his last season of full-time competition. Don't know exactly what his plans are next year. The number 10 is still one of the rides that's very much in the discussion for a lot of the silly season stories that are continuing through this summer and into the fall as we wrap up this season. But Almirola, with his first last place finish of the season, his first on a road course, and the 15th of his Cup Series career, in last place spot there. He had an earlier incident with Kyle Larson that he couldn't seem to recover from. It looked like they had another toe link issue. We saw so many of those today. We've seen so many of them this season. But this is probably the most we've seen in any single race this year, at least from what we were seeing on the what we were able to see on TV there. But in Almirola's case, unfortunately, the team wasn't able to make the repair as quick as these other teams had. It seemed to indicate that the 6-minute clock had expired on him, but he went behind the wall because there was a shot during the NBC broadcast of the car being pushed backwards up pit road, which is usually an indication that the team is going to go to the garage area, as it was the case here. But in a case where a driver had just been involved in an incident, clearly a situation that just took him out of the event. There were other drivers that were already having problems, not to mention Chris Buescher's incident by that point. So it took a while for him to actually fall into last place. But at the same time, the discussion came up. I think there's somebody who was asking me about, having the situation where a driver is classified last in a race, even though it didn't bring out a caution. That's something you recall that actually has changed during this whole damaged vehicle policy situation. It has caught drivers off guard. We were covering the race at Watkins Glen in 2018. This happened to Joey Logano, who had an incident in turn one very early on. Caved in the nose of the car, then ran off course, came down pit road to get that all taken care of, needed to change the radiator. Team had to get the car behind the wall to get the radiator replaced, but by going behind the wall, they were knocked out of the race because they were still on the clock for the crash clock. This happened to Almirola as well. The other incident I can recall, I believe it was Bristol, when he ran the Shazam paint scheme on the number 10 car, had an incident where he had pulled behind the wall with some relatively minor crash damage, but regardless, was knocked out of the race under the damaged vehicle policy and wasn't able to return. It's become a little bit less frequent with the teams being more aware of what the policy is, but it seemed in this particular case, especially with the whole issue with the toe link from 1 week to the next, it seemed like that was more the situation that dropped them behind, not really a lapse in judgment by the team. Although, if I don't know if you guys have heard anything more on it on my end. I didn't really listen to the 10 cars team because I was listening more to Buescher's and the ongoing saga of what was going on with the fire retardant material in the car. So you had the issue with Buescher, you had the issue with Almirola, you also had Justin Haley at the very first lap gets spun out, damages the splitter. He had to drag that splitter around for the first 15 laps. Unfortunately, a couple other drivers lost laps, so he wasn't able to get the lucky dog. Had to get some repairs to that. Had kind of a similar issue to what Noah Gragson had in Saturday's Xfinity Series race. But then at the same time, issues for both of the Team Hesburgh entries there that were both in the race. Great to see Daniel Kvyat. I'm sure I'm butchering the name there. I don't really follow Formula One that much, but familiar with his name from running those 110 Formula One Grand Prix there. And good to see another driver from an international contingent participate in NASCAR. Seems like we usually get a lot of those drivers at Sonoma, but now when we have more road courses, you have more options, and certainly a course like this that has hosted Formula One Grand Prix before. Good to see him tackle it. Seemed like both he and Hesmans were just kind of hanging in there, trying to log laps and do the best they could. Both of them felled by multiple mechanical issues that dropped them in the back of the field. Both of them spending extended stays in the garage area. Hesmans had all sorts of issues with the transmission on the number 27. Daniel Kvyat's car kept stopping on the track at one point or another, and eventually had to just kind of sit out the end of stage 2, just sitting in turn 4, waiting for the caution to come out so he can get cleared back into the garage area. But in both cases, the Hesburgh team was still able to get both cars back out. Tremendous effort for him there. I think this is a team that has very limited resources. Josh Realm helping out with them there, of course, with his presence more in the truck series and some limited Xfinity exposure there with them. Good to see them get back out there, not just be able to return to the race, but enter two cars with the different manufacturers. And of course, the big discussion, I believe it was a Dutch-built engine that was put in the 27 car there, or the 26 car for Kvyat. Really amazing to think about other foreign engine manufacturers. This is something that doesn't usually come up at all. I mean, you think Mike Joy was discussing this earlier in the week about the fact that you used to have international races. You'd have Jaguars and MGs and stuff out there running their own equipment. They weren't trying to drop American engines into those. But you have to go back about that far. But when you're going to kind of discuss something about putting in a power plant that wasn't made by a Hendrick or a Gibbs or the TRD or Roush Yates or anything like that. But that's kind of the cool thing with a lot of these small teams kind of really experimenting with it. Unfortunately, in this case, it seemed like the experiment was not entirely successful. I don't know how much of that could be attributed to the engine because the car seemed like it was able to keep running. But whether it was an electrical issue or something else that was going on, for one reason or the other, the car kept stalling and ended up dropping them back in the lineup there. So a different situation there for the number 26. But he, Hesman's ranked behind Kvyat, actually, 37th and 36th. Larson and Ty Dillon rounding out your bottom five there. Other drivers with serious problems in this one. Kevin Harvick had a toe link snap on his car after a late race incident there, dropping him back to 33rd, now in a most definite must-win situation as we come up to one of his best tracks in Michigan, but not by any means a guarantee, especially with how many other teams have really improved in the time since we saw Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin dominate most of the 2020 season for the championship, only to have very different outcomes by the time we got to the championship for Harvick in a very difficult situation there. Alex Bowman as well had an incident with a flat left front tire, appeared to get into the wall as well, had the nose shoved in, had another incident. I think he was involved in the Harvick incident, if I remember correctly, but got involved in that one and dropped him back to the 32nd spot. William Byron, another Hendrick car, along with Bowman there, had a snap toe link after the incident with Chase Elliott. Elliott seemed like he had a good shot at pulling off yet another road course win. Seemed to be in the right spot at the right time. Unfortunately, a bit of contact in what was easily the most treacherous turn in this race, the first corner. Had an incident that dropped him well back in the running order and ended up collecting his teammate Byron in the process. Elliott showing here in the results back to, where is he here? Elliott is he a lap down? I don't think he was a lap down. Must be overlooking it here at the same time. Where on earth did he go? Make sure I didn't leave that out here. Suarez, Chastain, Blaney, Truex. He covered a 16th, they see here for Chase Elliott. Yes, 16th for Chase Elliott. Right behind Chase Elliott, Ty Gibbs. I mean, my goodness. I know that today's race was a bit of a crapshoot. Almost felt like a super speedway race in the sense that you could have drivers just nonsensically find their way up there to the lead that haven't been a factor the entire day. But regardless, I mean, after that impressive 16th place run last week at Pocono, yes, helped a little bit by the two DNQs of the two Gibbs teammates, but still, he was a top 20 driver even before that happened. Now getting a 17th place finish on this, given the fact that he struggled a lot in the Saturday race as well, and the impressive heat and all the other crazy stuff. We didn't really see anything out of the 45 the entire day. At least I don't recall seeing anything that he was getting involved in or collected in anybody else's messes. He's just learning the right things and getting some laps under him and getting a good run here. This time, at least able to get some practice in qualifying, though again, at the cost of Kurt Busch. Still hoping that he's able to recover from his concussion-like symptoms since Pocono. Maybe we see him in Michigan. Not sure what's going on. It looks like it's kind of being played as a week-to-week basis here for the 2311 team, and we'll certainly find out. Justin Haley, mentioned him a little bit earlier. He had the early splitter damage. He was able to ultimately get back on the lead lap and finish in the 19th spot, so a decent recovery there for the colleague effort. Of course, his teammate Allmendinger, we talked about with the 7th place finish there. Again, a bit further back in the lineup for the defending winner of this race, but he certainly had his own share of adversity going on in the cockpit of that one. Speaking of adversity, you certainly have to talk about Brad Keselowski. He had at least 2 different spins out there, seemed to just be completely out to lunch in this race. Unfortunate to see him struggle so much. You think about some of his past runs for Penske and, especially at Watkins Glen. He was one of the drivers you had to watch pretty much every year when we came to upstate New York. Didn't seem to really translate at Sears Point, and we haven't really seen that jump as much here with these new road courses on here. Of course, that's coincided now with his decision to really work at Roush and eventually becoming the part owner of it. But still a 20th place finish there. Given all the struggles he had, probably happy with that one under the circumstances there too. although I'm sure he was hoping to be a bit closer to the front and have at least an outside shot at trying to punch his ticket into the playoffs here. Not sure how far he'd advance with the inconsistency that team's been having this year. But his teammates certainly, Chris Buescher, the 10th place finish, given all the ridiculous stuff going on there. But other things to certainly talk about there. Josh Bilicki looked like he was on his way to getting another top 20. He finished 18th here last year for Rick Ware Racing, was running around that spot there towards the end for Spire Motorsports, which I think is a great effort for them. Both the Spire teams seem to be very quietly kind of keeping their noses clean. Corey LaJoie worked his way up about as high as 12th, or kind of trying to get into the top 10. We'd seen some good runs there just after all the messes that they've been in the last few weeks, all these other incidents. They've been frequent features here on the Last Car site, which has been unfortunate. But it was good to see them both get on the lead lap. Maybe not the best runs that they've had all year, certainly not a career one, but I think a clean race. Although it sounded like the 7-car spun out at least once during this race. LaJoie finishing in the 18th spot, Bilicki in 22nd. So I think there's still some positives they can glean from that and build on coming up in the future. So we'll find out what the situation is there. Alrighty. Yes, the Dutch built engine. What was the company? Yeah, I think you need to really think about it there on that. It was, I wrote it in the review. There was somebody that posted a nice article featuring the company. Let me make sure I get that stat pulled up here. Yes, a APP racing engine, the first foreign built engine in Cup since those old international races there back in the day. But yes, a company out of the Netherlands was my understanding from the press release that was posted earlier this week. But yeah, I mean, really, pretty crazy race though. I mean, to say the least. I feel like I'm minimizing it too much here. I think we haven't really talked too much about the other controversies in this one. First and foremost, we have to talk about the Ross Chastain situation. I think a lot of what has been going on with Ross Chastain is kind of getting a little blown out of proportion. I think the media in general, especially the broadcast media, loves any kind of beef that's going to develop between two particular drivers because it's an easy storyline to follow. I think, honestly, you don't need a storyline like that to make the storyline interesting. I think there's something that's happening that may not seem significant to the entire championship, but is certainly significant to the team, and sometimes can be historically significant, and from one race to the next. And I hope that's something that comes across from the work that both myself and our other staff writers and guest contributors at the lastcar.info site are able to provide to you guys, because I think it provides another view of things that are happening. Again, this Dutch built engine thing, it would have been great if that got discussed more in this broadcast. They certainly had opportunity to, and the 26 was having its mechanical issues there towards the end of the race, but not seeing as much out of it. But back with the Ross Chastain, though, I mean, certainly turn one and the potential of drivers cutting the course is something that's already was kind of a concern from last year, and most famously the incident between Chase Briscoe and Denny Hamlin. Briscoe and Hamlin coming together at one end of the course, and then back at the other end, overshooting the corner and ultimately opening the door for AJ Allmendinger to be able to pull off the victory. In the case of this year, something a bit more flagrant, drivers actually not even attempting the corner and using the runoff area. We saw Denny Hamlin do this very early and running pretty quick, actually, through the access road to get back on track. LASTBRO raised the issue, and I think it's a good issue to raise, that there was an issue with maybe, where the safety equipment was staged, and make sure that it was actually safe to go through that very quickly. I didn't see the drivers meeting for this particular one or any information from it, but I'd be interested to know if that was something that they discussed and said that, okay, if you need to kind of cut off this area, you can go through this path, but you don't have to worry about maintaining a certain safe speed. Certainly still trying to get back on the track as soon as possible. This being used to great advantage by Ross Chastain, at least visually, at the end there, cutting back on course, and actually to the point where he pretty much single-handedly took the lead from that, from getting around Tyler Reddick, which I'm sure was a tremendous surprise to him there. Again, it's hard to tell with Chastain. I think that in the past he has had situations where people have criticized his aggression. But is he that much more? I think that the thing that's more of a hang up to me is he that much more exceptionally aggressive than any other driver out there? I mean, I thought what Joey Logano did going into turn one, when there was absolutely no hole there, and just bowling over those other cars there to get into that corner. I get you got to be aggressive and you got to, take the Ayrton Senna approach there. And if there's a gap, you're going to go for it. I don't even know if there was a gap there, honestly. I was waiting for him to get a black flag for some kind of cutting the course thing, since we seem to get so many of those back at COTA, being a similar track in terms of being able to cut the course pretty easily. But yeah, that's kind of more my issue on that one. And this particular one, I mean, I think the fact also that Austin Dillon also cut the course. I know he was a lap down after spinning into the gravel pit there. I think that seemed to indicate that there were drivers that, look, we're not going to go in there and just completely tear up our equipment. And, was a bit further back in the lineup, maybe didn't have a shot at winning the race anyway. Just trying to go for it. I don't think it was a situation where, there's something larger afoot here where the team was talking about it and saying, oh, well, look, it comes down to it. You use this one and maybe nobody's going to see it. It's like, no, that's ridiculous. And I don't think it was something where they were going to kind of try to force NASCAR in a situation where they'd have to disqualify the winner. That already happened last week. So I think they knew that there wasn't going to be anything like that. I think it just came down to just being too many cars and too little of a space, and they didn't want to tear up any more equipment there. And Chastain is already still well up in the points. Just like, look, get what you can get. If it ends up being too much, take that route, just bite the bullet and see what happens. I think it probably surprised him just as much as anybody else that he was right up there with Reddick. And then, of course, once that happens, it's like, well, are you going to give up that spot? It's not easy to do. I think that's very hard to do under the circumstances. And the broadcast made pretty clear from the start that if something like that happened, that there was going to be a 30-second penalty that was going to be incurred on these drivers if it happened too close to the finish. So if that was made it clear enough from the broadcast, I'm sure it was made clear enough to the drivers, at least under those circumstances. So I don't know. But again, I think it's just the easiest kind of storyline to follow. I remember back at Sears Point, just after the Gateway thing happened, when Ross Chastain walked to the room, pretty much everybody got up out of their seat and wanted to talk to him for his media availability. So there was a lot of that. But it is what it is. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not a story. I just don't think it's the biggest story out there. I don't think it's any bigger than any other stories that are happening throughout this field. A whole other situation on that front there too. Bumper cars, yeah, exactly. I think that was the whole other situation that we saw with this one here too. What was the situation with the Busher fire, Philip? I see your question on that. Yeah, I'm not sure. It seemed like what seemed most surprising to me about them actually having him keep going in the race was it looked like the fire was on the dashboard. Once they took the window off and the air was able to get in there, it seemed like it really flared up. And luckily the extinguisher went off around that time. They were able to kind of tamp it back down. But in the split second that they showed it there, it looked like he had a real serious situation. Kind of reminded me of what Clint Boyer had at Sears Point in 2016, where he had a whole lot of smoke like rolling out from underneath the dash. And with all the electronics that are in these cars, even more of them now, you really can't afford to have any kind of situation like that. Lucky, it was very fortunate it wasn't a dangerous situation. But I'm very surprised again at the decision to keep Busher in the car. There was never an attempt for him to get out of the car. That they were just going to blow the stuff around there and drive around when he couldn't see. I don't know how much NASCAR was policing it. I was listening to their radio traffic as well as the 17 during most of that affair, and I never really heard any issues with the 17 getting black flagged for the smoke coming out of the cockpit or being forced to pit road. It seemed like most of that was just a decision of the team to get back in there. And most of it had cleared up after at least the third go around, and they made like another stop coming in there to take care of that. A very unusual situation. And again, I think that's something else that similar to kind of the window net issue back at the All-Star race. I'm surprised they're taking a little bit of a kind of a hands-off approach with an aspect of the driver's safety there. I think if it's a situation where the extinguisher goes off, yeah, I mean, now you have a car with either a non-functioning extinguisher or extinguisher with less contents in it. I'd like to know more about it. It would have been a great opportunity for the NBC booth to really use that cutaway car and talk about the fire suppression system. Again, maybe that's too much to ask, but it would have been nice if there was a substantial difference between the next gen car's fire suppression system and the older cars. It would have been good to understand that, because I'm just thinking about it from the context of the next gen car, where it's one hit, it fills the whole car with the foam in there, just dries everything out. and you know, that's just it. You're not going to be able to use it a second time, and so that's usually the cars just be parked at that point. The other aspect, of course, that was interesting about it was Steve Letart's reaction to it, where the supposition was that the foam had caught fire in the door of the car. And he said, well, look, the foam in the door isn't going to catch on fire. Well, that brought up another moment. I'm glad somebody else posted the clip on YouTube, so it made it pretty easy to pull up. In 2007, when the car of tomorrow was introduced, there was an incident that Kevin Harvick had where he was driving around and suddenly he had to pull over on the front stretch because there was a fire inside the cockpit. And he said that the foam had caught on fire, and there were shots of it where they checked out the foam and the foam was blackened. And Darrell Waltrip rather famously in the booth said, "Oh, that's impossible." It's like, well, look at it. It happened. Now I don't know how different the foam is in the current car versus the old one. It looks like it's made out of at least a darker material. I think the Ty Dillon accident actually kind of gave us a little bit of a better look at it than we've seen in some of these other incidents. So we could see that at least in color, it looks like it's made out of different material than the older one. The older one was kind of a much more softer, lighter color material. But back then, but regardless, I mean, if there is an issue where the foam is flammable, then that needs to be also treated very seriously. I sense that we're getting a notebook developed of issues, and I think we were talking about this on last week's show there with Pocono. You know, if there is something that needs to be handled, needs to be improved, I hope they're at least writing it down and then setting a timetable to actually fix it. Because if they're not, I think we're getting plenty enough evidence of things to kind of look at. Do I think this is alarming enough to, you know, do anything more drastic than that? I don't think we're quite at that point. But I think if they're examining the evidence and kind of understanding it better, maybe they'll kind of consider some other alternatives, whether it's, you know, again, it'd be a flammability test on this foam would be pretty easy to set up. So maybe kind of look into that too. But yeah, that was a bit troubling. And again, especially since that other incident with Harvick was way back in 2007, right when the car of tomorrow was introduced. So I don't know if it's just something similar with the next gen car and now its first year in existence. But it's another thing to kind of talk about there at the same time too. That'd be another one. Darlington in 2011, Randy. See your comment on that. Robbie Gordon. Were there other incidents with this with the foam? I'm trying to remember. The one from Martinsville certainly stands out in my mind more with the Cup Series because that was kind of the first situation with that. But yeah, wiring harness looked like it caught fire. Yeah, I mean it could be. I mean, hopefully we get some more information. That's always the challenging thing with this. You try to get as much information you can from the radio transmissions and what you hear on the radio broadcast or see on the TV broadcast. But then if you're able to follow up on anything like that through the week, I like calling these teams sometimes and just seeing like, you know, what's going on. I know back at Talladega when there was the hub issue that Matt Kenseth had, we had some statistics on the last place situation where the hubs on 3 of the 4 wheels had been listed as last place situation, and it was trying to see if there was the 4th different hub. I think it ultimately turned out to be the case. Was the reason that he had dropped out of the race there. So yeah, I mean it's again it's another one to kind of really look at in these other situations. Robbie Gordon at the Glen, I think that was the TV camera that was on board. And that was like 2001. I'm not sure if it was much, if you're thinking of a different one. Oh, you're talking about Canada in 2007. I don't know. Well, in Canada, that was one where he almost won the race. He basically had the situation there. I don't know. I'm sure there's other examples. Hopefully we'll see if we get some other information on that coming up there as well. But we'll talk more about the Xfinity and the Truck Series races here as well. I also have something for our show and tell segment here tonight. So we have that. It's actually relevant to the race today. So we'll jump into that as well a little bit later in the show tonight. But let me look at the rest of the results here on the Cup Series list here, and we'll get this set up here. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't look at the comments here earlier about the sound quality. Hopefully we're good. I see it's good. Okay, good. This is a big thing here. So here's kind of I'll give you a little bit of a peek behind the scenes here. It's another improvement we made here to the show. Over here, got one of these here. Got a Rode, what was this? The Rodecaster Pro here on this. I tried a different workaround on this, but I think this will actually improve the sound quality quite a bit. I've been using this a bit for some of my produced videos as well. I got a couple scripts I'm just about ready to record here. I'm hopeful this is going to actually improve the sound quality here. I tried working it last week and I couldn't get the thing to work. And it turned out the reason it wasn't working is I didn't turn the volume knob up. Once I turned the volume knob up, I heard it perfectly. So there's kind of that. So that's why we have kind of a little bit of a different sound to it here. And then actually when I have the microphone much closer and I do a recording like this, it'll sound a lot better. So I'm pretty happy with it. So it sounds a little bit different here. Certainly sitting back here, it's going to be a bit closer to the way the shows usually sound. But then for the videos, I'm hopeful that that's going to really improve that too. So, because I've been very happy with this microphone compared to my last one, and I'm hoping that this is going to. Basically, the reason I went for that is I looked on the instruction manual, and basically the quick start guide said you better have this and plug it into it. I'm like, okay, well I'm not going to try to do something that's like it. Let's just do that and get that on there. So we get that on there. So that's another one that we're kind of looking at here too. Let me jump into the super chats here as well. I think that'd be a good way to follow up this as well. Thank you so much for these on here. Michael Jensen, I see your comment on here. What a great weekend of racing. For me, the trucks at IRP were the best of all. How does NASCAR determine a did not start? Since Jeb never made a lap, I was surprised to see him classified with last when never turning a lap. Very good questions both. And first of all, I completely agree with the Truck Series race at IRP probably being the best of the weekend. I would have to say. We'll jump around here, but I want to address this first, especially since you brought it up in the super chat here. Yes, the Truck Series race this weekend was absolutely beyond belief. I was amazed at how well those trucks run. I'd forgotten. I mean, it's been since 2011 the Truck Series haven't competed at IRP. And, luckily we've had ARCA races and other events there and keeping that track alive. I guess they have local racing to kind of keep that going. But I was amazed at how competitive that truck race was. You had great storylines in this field. You had people, working each other over. It seemed like it was bizarre. It was like the bottom lane and the high lane were both equally fast. But then we got to the corner, the middle lane was just as fast as both of them. So you would invariably have these 2 and 3 wide situations around the entire track. I can't imagine what that would have been to look like in person. So that was fantastic. I mean, I'm already now considering adding that to maybe some future coverage down the line. I'm not sure about next year, but somewhere down the line here, because that was an outstanding race that weekend. I thought it was very competitive. It had some comers and goers. It had some great storylines built throughout it. LASTBRO and I were watching it, and I was telling him about the story with Ty Majeski and, how much he had gone through. And, I know he's still a very young driver, but, he was a very, highly touted prospect, and he had just a couple of unfortunate stretches where it just didn't work out. Driving the Roush Fenway Racing number 60 car in the Xfinity Series, where even guys like Austin Cindric, this year's 500 winner, were struggling. And Cindric seemed like he was at loose ends about where his career was going to be going. Majeski was very much in that situation and seemed to be handling even worse in the starts that he had. Then he had the Truck Series effort along the way for Nice Motorsports. Seemed like that was going to be a good home. And then that didn't work out. I think he was the one that was upside down on his roof at Daytona a couple of years ago. Things didn't seem to really improve there. And then he's out of that ride. And then he's just basically sweeping the floors over at the Thor Sport team. And they get this idea of having another entry out there. And I know Thor Sport equipment is outstanding. That you can probably put just about any driver in there and it's going to improve quite a bit. But Majeski, I think, is I know Hocevar gets a lot of the attention, and rightfully so, for being kind of the hard luck hero out there, trying to really get his first win, and doing the whole hat of the week thing and all that. He's a fun guy, and I don't want to dismiss at all the very real adversity he's gone through. I mean, I was standing there talking with Mason Philippi when his truck rolled in with the rear end shoved in, and then looking over at the leaderboard and seeing he'd actually won the pole before he slipped off the track. And he hobbled out of that truck, and he was just utterly disgusted with what had happened there. But he's gone through a lot himself. But I think there's room for many drivers in the discussion there of people that are really willing to kind of get up there. And Majeski, who was very good in that Sears Point race as well, has been pounding on the door of getting his first Truck Series win. Seemed to indicate very much the same in his discussion on social media here as well. So I think he's going to be, I know the playoffs have started and, the seeding is what it is. But I think he made a very good statement there, distinguishing himself at IRP. I figured that would play very well into his hands with the late model background. And he almost pulled it off. That was probably his career best run of all the ones that we saw this weekend. Unfortunately, things changed at the end. Enfinger had a very fast truck out there. Another guy that's gone through so much in his career from the ARCA series. Good to see him have some success finally with the GMS effort. He was very highly favored to have a good run out there, and I thought that was excellent. So, and those are just some of the stories from there. You had a lot of new drivers coming in there. How about Lane Riggs? Let's talk about this kid. My God, Scott Riggs' son is just over the moon that he's going to drive the number 62 truck for the Hallmark Friesen effort. He hops into that truck there, and you know, there's this great video. It reminded me out of that Disney cartoon where you have like the old blue roadster that gets like, you know, hopped up, and you know, they fix the car up. It's like an old beat up car, and they fix it up, and it's like it's 10 years younger. They bring that 62 truck up, and he's driving it down this road and like locking the brakes up. You can tell he was just amped up for this start, and rightfully so. Running well, I believe it's South Boston. He's been tearing it up on the late model ranks there. I was so impressed with it. I mean, at the very same track that Scott Riggs, his father, made his Truck Series debut, he comes out there and he's like, gets into the top 20. He was just outside the top 20 in qualifying, gets in the top 15, works a little bit of tire strategies, up in the top 5. And then what? He was 7th at the end of the race there. I mean, just an outstanding effort there for Lane Riggs. Apparently, we're going to get him at Richmond too in the next couple of weeks here. Yes, 7th place from 23rd on the grid, finishing on the lead lap. Didn't lead a lap in the race, but yeah, I mean, that's probably the most impressive I've seen one of these newcomers since Parker Retzlaff earlier this year in the Xfinity Series for RSS Racing. I think, you know, again, these are moments that you look at and you're like, yeah, you know, the future is really bright. And I think even these second generation drivers, maybe even if their fathers didn't have the most successful career, we're seeing a lot coming out of, you know, a lot of this group of drivers. You know, look at what Ryan Blaney's done. I mean, look at the Dillon brothers. Austin in particular is a 500 winner. You know, and Lane Riggs seems to be kind of going in that same trajectory there. So great to see. I thought the broadcast was surprisingly good, even though it was done remotely, clearly. Even though, you know, all of that, but I thought the camera work was a lot better. I think what they did is it seemed like they consulted a lot of the older races and used similar camera positions. I recognize a lot of the shots they used from older races there, you know, further back, even, you know, way back ago. I like that they featured Michael Waltrip and reminded everybody that he's actually a race winner there in the Xfinity Series. I thought that was probably the best I've seen out of the FS1 broadcast, aside, you know, certainly better even than Daytona. I thought Daytona, they at least reduced the goofiness just because the race wasn't as crazy. But I think in that case, they didn't know what to do. I felt like in this race, they knew exactly what to do. And I thought it was the most engaged they sounded in the race. I thought Vince Welch was decent. I thought he was fine. I thought he wasn't a distraction to what was happening in the race. I felt like he was much more like, I don't think he really still added too much to the broadcast. There wasn't like a great big call I felt that stood out, but I felt he didn't distract from it. And that's an improvement. That's an improvement. So I'll give certainly credit where credit is due. And that's one I'd certainly bring up at the same time. But yeah, there was that situation. I'm seeing it in the comments too. And I definitely have to talk about that too. There were definitely some controversies there along the way in the Truck Series race. And we had a good discussion about this on social media on Friday. And it kind of made me think more about my discussions about, big name drivers in the field. I think that the way the playoffs are set up is that you expect there's going to be close, intense racing between the playoff drivers. And you kind of would presume that those drivers are all going to be at the front of the field because they're the ones that are in the playoffs. They're going to be going for wins because the wins mean even more to them because it means actually advancing through the playoffs or getting a better seed to kind of rank yourself better. This is kind of another thing. I'll get to the other part of your question here, Michael, here in a moment, because you have a good question on that too for the Xfinity race. But just to kind of finish up on the Truck Series race here too. I think the situation where you have the playoffs, I think it's excusable that you would have a couple playoff guys that just kind of wreck each other or push each other around. Even the situation like you had between a driver like Matt Kenseth and Joey Logano before Kenseth was eliminated, of course. The Martinsville situation ended up being a very different animal at that point, but not entirely unforeseeable. But when you expect the playoff guys to race each other the hardest because they know we're going for the big prize. We're not just going for race wins at this point. We're going for the championship. Where the line is, though, is the collateral damage with teams that are not going for the championship or just other drivers that are out there. I think that what happens that I think is a little bit distasteful, especially in the playoffs, is the attitude that the full-time drivers or the playoff drivers have to the drivers that are just trying to get a good run out there. And we saw two very clear examples of situations there that I think that kind of crossed the line there a bit. One was certainly the incident between Carson Hocevar and Colby Howard. Colby Howard is yet another driver that has had an up and down career in very short time, driving for JD Motorsports. I believe it was at Kansas or Chicagoland. He had a great run going there, like a top 10 run going, got in an accident, ended up being knocked out of that one. Ultimately losing his ride at JD Motorsports and getting back into the truck series. He lands over at this Bill McAnally team. I still maintain he had like a decent run for parts of the Daytona race this year. Unfortunately, still ended up, back in the order, but hasn't really been a factor for much of this year. Seems like he's always kind of had struggles from one race to the next. But this one, he ran a very clean race, worked his way into the top 10. He did get into Carson Hocevar, to be fair, getting off of the fourth corner, and it looked like there was going to be a bit of a battle between the two of the drivers there. But then at the same time, you had a collision there where Hocevar hooked left, very clearly took the 91 truck out, completely screwed his day, dropped him well back in the order. I don't blame Howard at all for being as upset as he was in that situation. And I think that's where the line is. I think that a rough driving penalty, I don't think you could blame the playoff drivers for racing other playoff drivers rough, because that's the nature of it. You don't want them out there wrecking each other every week, obviously. There's still some limits with that. But I think there's more latitude given, and should be, in those situations versus other drivers further back in the field. And I don't think it's just my bias there talking about smaller teams and them not getting the same treatment as the larger teams out there, although I do think that's true. I think that's where, in terms of policing things and setting up rules going forward, that's something that they should kind of look at too. That would be in our situation at the same time. The other one I'm seeing it mentioned in the chat there, of course, the John Hunter Nemechek situation with Tanner Gray. John Hunter did not want to talk about that in the post-race interview, but then the situation on that. Robert Vandermeer, yeah, thank you for bringing it up. Yes, you were the one I quote tweeted on that, so thank you absolutely for bringing that up at the same time. Definitely the situation with John Hunter Nemechek, very similar. Driver that, he could have gone around him. He had fresher tires. He had a faster truck. Did he have to wreck Tanner Gray? No, I don't think so. Now, it wasn't as flagrant of a situation. I think he just basically nerfed him out of the groove and kind of forced him into the fence. But regardless, the result was the same. He ended up back in the order. A good run that he could have had was ruined. And especially on that 17 team, which at times has looked practically unstoppable when they put like Ryan Preece behind the wheel or some of these other guys out there. They've had some great runs these last few weeks. Look like they were set for another one. I don't think it should be. I think it's the situation, and I think it does dovetail, I feel, with the Cup Series guys and lower series, particularly in Xfinity. And you better believe we're going to get back into that again. We talk about the Xfinity race here in a little bit. I think that when these guys are in there, they know who they are. They say, okay, well, look, I'm a Cup guy. This is beneath me. These drivers are beneath me. I think if these drivers are being perfectly honest, they're going to say they come in there with that attitude. And it's like, no, this isn't just another batch of drivers that are at the same level that we are. It's like, no, I'm still the big fish here. I should be ahead of these guys. And if some guy is ahead of me having a great run, but he's in lower equipment than I have, I need to get him out of the way by any means possible. And I think that's the way, and if that's not what they do, they sort of drive that way. That's always kind of the way it feels in one of these situations. And I think we saw a good example of that, unfortunately, in the situations there between, the incidents that got both Tanner Gray and the Colby Howard trucks out of the race there, which is unfortunate because I think the rest of the race there was quite good. Certainly not good for the last place finisher there. Spencer Boyd dropping out of the race there with a fire under the hood of his truck after an early tangle with Josh Realm. Josh dropping out of the race for not maintaining minimum speed after the damage to the rear of his truck, dropping them well back in the lineup there. But a different situation for those guys. an unfortunate situation, but a couple very early exits to start the weekend. We'll get into the Xfinity race because, yes, as Michael mentioned, Jeb Burton not completing a lap in the Xfinity race is something we'll definitely be talking about here tonight as well. Think and Repent, thank you for the super chat as well. Brock, how long do you think Harvick will continue to race? I got to admit, I've been chewing that over a little bit these last few weeks, especially as we've now gone past a couple of these races that traditionally you expect Harvick to not only be a factor, but potentially win the race just a couple of years ago. It seems like he's just completely at loose ends with this car. I think, I'm not sure. I like to think that maybe after, running this car this year, he'll have a better grasp of it. And then maybe for future races, he's going to be handling it a lot better. I'd like to see that. I mean, I think that the first few races of next year are going to be a pretty good indication of it. If it's, again, it looks like Daytona and Fontana are going to start the year again, at least from what we're seeing on this. So, yeah. Did I say Tanner Gray? Yeah, Taylor Gray. Yes, exactly. Whichever, the gray that it was Taylor. Taylor Gray. Thank you for bringing that up. So we got that too. How long do I think Harvick will continue to race? I think Harvick is the type that I think he'll just race as long as he wants to. I don't think he's going to pay attention to anybody that's going to try to scuffle him out the door. I don't think Stewart's in any particular rush to get him out of there. And I think he still draws the sponsorship. I mean, I don't know how, I assume the sponsor's still happy. I haven't seen any real issues with that. We're not hearing the same discussions that we're hearing with Kyle Busch here with him. I think that we still have a couple races this year, like Michigan next week, like Bristol, when we get into the playoffs, that he could be very good at. He's still got the top 10 streak going at Phoenix. He could very easily keep that going, even if he's not in the top 4 this year. I don't think he's quite in the same situation as, drivers like Jimmy Johnson have been in the past or others. I do think he's in definitely that category of drivers that really does need to figure out this next gen car more and really kind of understand what they need out of it, because I think their driving style just isn't conducive to it at this point too. So hopefully we'll see what happens here. I'm not sure what's going to happen on that. We already have the opening with the 10 car here next year for Almirola, so I don't think there's any rush to get him out the door. And then, of course, there's a lot of speculation around Cole Custer and what's going to happen with him. There's been discussions already about Kyle Busch getting over there. There's another thing I want to talk about, too, and kind of as a corollary to this Think and Repent. The Kyle Busch situation, we haven't talked too much about it on the show here. I'm still wondering how much of all this Kyle Busch, Joe Gibbs, M&M's thing, I wonder how much of this is really a big deal and how much of this is just theater to try to drum up attention for a sponsor. To me, it doesn't smell right. Like, it's, okay, this is Kyle Busch. He just released a movie about how he's going to win. He's won these 2 championships and he's going to win more in the future. And, he's got all he's had all this success with Joe Gibbs, and he brought back the 18 car back to victory lane, the way it hadn't been since Bobby Labonte left. And, are they really going to let him go? Is it really going to be a situation where he's going to think that he's going to be better off at Stewart-Haas or any other team when all these teams are running the next gen car? When he has this long-standing relationship now with TRD, do we really think that there's going to be something else that's going on with that? I have a very hard time believing that. I really think that, and again, and maybe it's just ignorance on my part, but I really think if they're not getting a sponsor for the 18 car, I could see him doing what Jeff Burton did in 2004 and just run the car without a sponsor just to stay involved with the team. I don't see him going over to 2311. I don't see that team turning everything upside down when they already have with the whole Tyler Reddick situation. I think Stewart-Haas, quite frankly, would be a bit of a step down from Joe Gibbs. I don't think it's a bad team, but I think that would be such a massive difference that I'm not sure if that would work. I'm not sure if the sponsors would get along with him. I know that they didn't even have Kurt Busch drive for Stewart-Haas for very long either. I think probably, and they're probably not letting this out because I would sense that would probably stymie the search for a sponsor. But I mean, I think Kyle Busch would run for Gibbs regardless. I mean, I'm surprised he's not in something close to like a lifetime contract like Jeff Gordon had with Hendrick, or when Dale Jarrett had with Robert Yates. Although ultimately he drove for Toyota at the end of that, but something of that nature. I don't know. I don't know. So I know Ty Gibbs is coming up the ranks, and clearly runs like today are another good indication that, I mean, they got to put him somewhere. And I don't think it's practical that he needs to do another season in the Xfinity Series. I think he's more than proved himself. He's certainly capable of getting even better runs than a guy like, than drivers like Christopher Bell had. Christopher Bell looked unstoppable in the Xfinity Series. Eric Jones and stuff before that. But I don't know. I would almost think that I mean, I know Truex has already said he's coming back next year, and that's kind of relieved that a bit. And I'm sure now Christopher Bell's won New Hampshire. That's probably given him a better foothold. And they're not going to move Denny Hamlin anywhere. That's the situation. I think it's probably more likely that, this Kurt Busch thing becomes more of a story at 23-11. And it just kind of ends up kind of going that direction instead for Gibbs. But I'm sure they'd rather have Ty Gibbs underneath the Joe Gibbs Racing banner. And, I'm sure there's a thought to that. But that's about the only part of it that I'm having an issue with. It just seems to me that I have a really hard time getting my mind around the concept of Kyle Busch being the weak link in anything in terms of the drivers there. I'm really trying to wonder Truex's situation here. Kyle Busch has at least outperformed Truex this year. And Truex is not a bad driver either at all. And he's certainly gone through his share of stuff too. I don't know. I don't know. I think there's just a lot going on behind the scenes of the Toyota team that we're just not privy to, and maybe it'll get cleared up a bit more. But that's kind of the other thing I'm looking at there too. See the comments, yeah, about the nose piece. I thought it was great for Pockris to show the actual picture with the nose piece from Pocono. I think that was cool to see on that, and actually clear up what the tape on the nose even meant. That was much more revealing. I love when you can actually see the physical object that we're talking about, because otherwise you hear all this stuff about a tape under the nose and it's just kind of, it doesn't hang together. And it's just like, what the heck is going on? But that was kind of the way it felt like to me on that one. Thank you also for the super chat, Beast of Metal. My current leader for most disappointing moment of the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series was realizing that Hamlin and Rowdy were disqualified as a smokescreen preempt significant conversation of McDowell being screwed over for no reason. Well, yeah, you raise a good point, Beast of Metal, and thank you so much for the super chat as well. McDowell, I mean, my goodness, the controversy this week with his other penalty. I mean, they had some other situation on the 34 car, and he gets docked. This on top of the rocker box situation that had the Petty GMS teams, both of them, the 42 and the 43. I don't know what was going on in tech inspection at Pocono. But they were dropping the hammer, quicker and more frequently than ever there. I guess they felt that maybe some other teams were getting away with other stuff more often and needed to make an example out of somebody. Well, I think the message got communicated pretty thoroughly there. Not really sure exactly how that's going to turn out, but that would be another one to kind of look at there too. But, good question. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the double disqualification last week was, of course, huge news. And those of you who were on the show here last week, that was kind of broken. We weren't breaking it, of course, but when we heard about it here, when other people were breaking it, certainly, kind of toss things up in the air. You're certainly going to want to wonder, what's going on with, with the situation. NASCAR never confirmed that was a nose piece. That would be interesting. If that wasn't the nose piece, I don't know why they would take that with another nose piece and put it on there. Was that a situation where they were just kind of doing it to demonstrate what the issue was? I don't know. I'm pretty sure they're not going to keep the same nose piece on there with, the tape on it. But, I don't know if it's as simple as just literally taking the cellophane off those corners. It just looked like such a small portion of it there. But then again, I'm not sure if they're going to run the same car from Pocono at the Indy Road Course either. So I don't know if there's a need to do that at the same time. But that's another one. But yeah, I'm with you, Beast of Metal. I don't like that McDowell got caught up in some dragnet on that too, that he had a great top 10 run going. I'm glad that he was able to bounce back this week and have another good run, to at least get back into the saddle there. Whereas Joe Gibbs' teammates, they seem pretty much out to lunch most of this race today to do. Kyle Busch outside the top 10 most of the running. Denny Hamlin with those multiple incidents had a car that just seemed to simply not want to handle at all during most of this race, dropping him back in the lineup there too. But that would be another one to kind of look at that too. But yes, thank you so much for the super chat there, Beast of Metal, man. You don't have to do that all the time, man, but I appreciate you doing it, man. Let me get to the other half of Michael Jensen's question here about the post-race inspection, or the the last place finisher in the Xfinity Series race. We'll talk more about that. I think we already pretty much talked about most of the Truck Series race there. Those are most of the big stories there. Let's see. Yeah, Lane Riggs in the top 10 there, the seventh spot. We talked about Spencer Boyd's last place run. Blake Lothian with the drive shaft failure. Just a rough day for the Josh Realm effort there. And a very quick one there, but not quite as quick as the Xfinity Series race in terms of settling last place. A bizarre situation there at the back of the field where both Chase Briscoe and Jeb Burton had to make unscheduled stops down pit road. Briscoe was already going to go to the back of the field because of a tire change. So the situation that he had with a high idle in the engine, apparently an issue with the throttle, which, certainly throttle issues at a track with long straightaways, even though we're not doing the oval, we're doing the road course here, still something that's troubling enough here to kind of look at. Apparently the issue was resolved because he still finished in the 5th position there. But of course, being a Cup Series regular from the region and running so well in the Cup race last year shouldn't have been at all a surprise. But unfortunately, what was surprising was that Jeb Burton, apparently a combination of a track bar issue where the track bar was hanging out the bottom left of the car, or a truck arm, according to Jeb Burton's own tweets on the matter there, putting him behind the wall. He had to pull down pit road and pull behind the wall. It was the first time that the last place finisher of the race did not take the green flag on the track since Bailey Curry last year. Now, the question was raised, and Michael Jensen raised this very well, why was this not considered a did not start? As far as I can tell, if the car's engine fires and it leaves pit road and it's completing pace laps, or at least trying to complete a pace lap, that it's no longer a did not start. That the did not start doesn't necessarily mean didn't take the green flag or didn't start the race with everyone else. It literally, I think it's treated more literally now, that it's a situation where the car just literally didn't fire on the grid. Now I could be wrong about that, because you could have a situation where the car doesn't fire on the grid and then the car is pushed behind the wall and they find out it's because there's some problem with the engine and they're just out of the race. I think we've actually had that happen at some point along the way. But in this particular case, yeah, the truck arm, the track bar thing, they were taking about 10 laps to try to fix the issue. Ultimately, the team got on the radio, said, look, we're loading it up on the truck. Sorry to waste your guys' time. It's just not our day out there. That was basically what the team was communicating over the radio. Once that happened, they loaded the car up. I know Jeb was very disappointed. He had a decent qualifying run, starting in the 21st spot there, but ended up in the back of the field. And just like that, I mean, about 11 laps into the race, NASCAR already declared him out of the event. Very unfortunate. But yes, I think I was just starting to mention Bailey Curry was the most recent driver that finished last without taking the green flag on the track. This was in Texas, actually, when we were doing the trackside coverage for the All-Star race last year. I was in the garage area, and we had a situation between both these different drivers, and it could have very easily been a different scenario. We had Bailey Curry pulled out with the rest of the field, and then during one of the pace laps, the car broke down, stopped on the track, and had to get towed into the garage area. Meanwhile, on pit road, Jordan Anderson was starting about midway through the pack, and his car didn't fire. And the crew was working underneath the hood and trying to figure out what the issue was. They pushed him behind the wall. And at the same time, the 74 that Curry was driving for Mike Harmon at the time was getting towed into the garage area. So at the time, both these cars are in the garage area. Both of them missed the start of the race. And the race is on to get both these cars in the garage. Now, as it so happened, both these cars were sitting right in front of each other, nose to nose, in the garage area, as both crews were thrashing on everything. It ultimately ended up being a situation where Anderson's car was fixed, and he was able to get back out there and actually start the race. I wonder if Anderson didn't get back out there. I wonder if that would have been considered a did not start. Under the definition I believe it to be, although I'm not sure if that's conducive with, the way it used to be. I believe that would have qualified it as a did not start, because the car was just literally not fired and had to get pushed behind the wall. Didn't even attempt one pace lap, because what happened with the number 74 car, since it did complete a pace lap, It was actually listed out. I believe it was an electrical issue on that one. They certainly had that was one where they had a battery that Harmon pulled out of it, and it was like sizzling, and they had like a short in it. They tried to kind of jerry rig something together to get it going, and unfortunately, it just became a big mess there at that point. And something happened with the circuitry, and they couldn't get the car back out there. That was ultimately factored into the reason that he had dropped out of the race at that point. NASCAR declared him out. But I wonder if Anderson had been the one that ultimately couldn't get back out, and they just loaded the car up at that point. If that would have been a did not start, that would have been interesting, because we haven't seen a did not start for quite some time. I think that's one of the ones like Quit, where it hasn't been used in a while, even though you could probably have later reasons out categorized in the same way. I think that's kind of the tricky part of it here. Looking at the Cup Series results, I'm kind of pulling up my stat page here to kind of get you some more context on that. We did have kind of a different situation there. So it was listed as a track bar situation. Only the second time that a track bar was listed as the official reason out. I guess the electronic functions of the track bar system, I guess, or something that was a factor in there. At least in terms of the device actually failing or causing the team to not start the race. But in this particular case, yeah, they just couldn't fix the issue. Previous time was in 2019 in the Cup Series with Quinn Houff, who had finished last in a race, I believe it was in Chicagoland, where they had an issue with the track bar, and they ultimately just had to park the car at that point. Yes, looking at my stats here, the most recent time it did not start happening in the Cup Series was back in the 1993 Southern 500 with Bob Schacht. He was driving, I believe it was for Thea Dixon, in fact, the number 85 car. Had a race where he did not start. However, in that case, I believe he did actually fire and do a pace lap before he got pushed behind the wall. So maybe the definition has changed. Again, mentioning Quit a little bit earlier, that also I believe hasn't been used since 93. Obviously, we had a whole era of start and park teams that where, the reason out could have just as easily just been, listed as Quit for any and all of those. And we probably would have seen that, increase the, up the rankings. But unfortunately, I mean, a lot of those are kind of lost to history a little bit. Whether it was NASCAR trying to save face, or this is just what the protocol was at the time, you still have several races where you have drivers that are listed out because of ignition problems, or because of a vibration, or because of all that. So many of Jeff Green's last place runs, is when he was taking the overall last car record, were because of that there. But yeah, in terms of it did not start, at least in the Cup Series, has not happened since 1993. So a bit different there. At the same time, we did have a situation where Jeb Burton did join the very elite group of drivers who have completed the Last Car Triple Crown, which, for those of you who don't know, is drivers that have finished last in at least one Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series points race. Only 39 drivers have done so in the history since, really since the beginning of 1995, when drivers could get one in all three, when the Truck Series was added to the schedule. The first one to do so is Ken Schrader, who did it by 1996. He'd already finished last in races in the Xfinity and Cup Series by that point, I believe back in the 1980s even then. So that was certainly the case for him. And also, really, after the end of this race, you only had 8 drivers that have both finished last in each of the NASCAR's top 3 series and won a race in the top 3 series. Schrader is also one of those. The most recent of these drivers in that category is actually Christopher Bell, who has now multiple wins in the Cup Series and multiple wins in the Xfinity Series and a couple in the Truck Series, but has also finished last at least once in the top 3 series there too. So, again, something very unusual. Almirola, I believe, is also another driver on the list that has satisfied both criteria here. The unofficial last place finisher of this year's Cup Series race at the Indianapolis road course. Let's check out the page here and see if we have any other updates. Do we have any other updates on the technical inspection? I don't anticipate it's going to be every week's going to be like last week. I think last week was pretty exceptional, and probably teams are going to be walking on eggshells here for a little bit after the conclusion of this. Let's see. Nope, not seeing any updates on Pockrass's page, but I saw this mentioned in the comments here, saying about Ryan Blaney being upset here. Let's see. Kelly Crandall posting this and Bob Pockrass retweeting it. Ryan Blaney was fuming after the race after being spun, said it wasn't the tires, said that was a case of just getting wrecked. That's all people do at the end of these things. Just dive down there and effing wreck you. And I don't know who shoved who. I don't care. story to come, says Kelly. So those of you who follow her, look forward to that. Yeah, so again, kind of a crazy, crazy situation on all fronts there for a lot of these competitors. But again, getting back to Jeb Burton again in the LASTBRO Triple Crown. Again, he is the 39th driver to complete that feat. Actually took him about a decade to do so. His first last place run in the trucks was way back in 2012. Way back ago. I still did articles back then too, so I think we got that might have been during a different time I was off there for a couple weeks, but it's still there in the feature there as well. Parker Kligerman and Ryan Ellis ended up eliminated very early on in the race as well. Kligerman had several mechanical issues with the Emmerling Gase car, which is unfortunate. He seemed like he was able to fight through those a lot better at COTA earlier this year, but unfortunately this time around had a issue with the brakes, and very similar case to the situation with Kyle Larson today, and Ty Dillon collided with Ryan Ellis. Ellis said that was one of the hardest hits he's ever taken. It was much harder than it looked like on TV when the two of them were brushed off the track. But it destroyed the rear end of his car. Ellis tried to keep going after the fact there. Unfortunately, only completed 17 laps, 6 laps more than Kligerman did. Kligerman was already off the lead lap after his issues earlier in the race. So it was actually only maybe 1 or 2 laps really that Ellis was able to complete before his issue. Bubba Wallace in the 35th spot and Brandon Brown in the 47 car. Certainly have to talk about this. The heartbreaker for him, I mean, we were at Texas during the same weekend for the Bailey Curry last place run. That was the same weekend he was running the for sale graphics on the 68 car when he was trying to when he did the viral video trying to promote getting some more sponsors on the 68 car. Since then, we've seen them in playoff contention. We've seen them in contention for wins. Ultimately, of course, the win at Talladega last year, joining that triple first-time winner race weekend that weekend there. But now apparently the news is bad, unfortunately, at the number 68 team, that they do not have sufficient sponsorship to keep Brandon in the car, which is perplexing for a situation where it's a family-owned team and they can't keep their own family member in the car, that they have to get Austin Dillon in there, and then Dillon finishing ultimately in the, where is he? In the 26th position there for Austin at the finishing of this race here. But Brandon Brown, number 47 car, don't know how many more times he's going to have to run for Mike Harmon in these future races. But it's not looking like a good prognosis there for the 68 team. Hopefully they can find a sponsor and keep things going and get things back to where they are. They still had some flashes of brilliance this year. I know there was a lot of controversy last year with the LGB coin and all that. But I thought in spite of that, they were really handling the best that they could, even as early as Fontana earlier this year. We were covering them out there. Still getting a decent run out there in the 68 car. So I hate to see any of these teams struggle. And it's all the more distasteful when it is a situation where you have all these Cup Series drivers in there, and especially Cup Series guys in the Xfinity cars. And yes, it is time once again for our near weekly segment where I once again complain in great detail about why Cup guys don't need to be in the Xfinity Series. I was, quite honestly, fed up with the utter whitewashing of what was going on at the finish of this Cup Series race, the Xfinity Series race, and the broadcasters being like, "Oh, this is why Ross Chastain needs to be in here. You see, he's got to get more laps, and see, this is David fighting Goliath. Look how good this team's doing now that they have a Cup Series guy in the car. Isn't that great?" Okay, first and foremost, this is Mario Gosselin's team, DGM Racing, which is always one of the teams that you have to watch for, especially on the road courses. They are a sneaky group of guys with their own regulars. Josh Williams, I'm sure, is still regretting the fact that he has left that team. He is unfortunately, nothing against BJ McLeod, but they just had so many problems this year. Williams failing to qualify for the Xfinity race already being one of those. I know he got to make a Cup race this Sunday, but unfortunate to see him struggle there because when he drove for DGM, he was having great runs. Preston Pardis gets in those cars, and he's a factor going for the win. Unfortunately, he had struggles this week, but that's not been the case at tracks like Road America or tracks like COTA being right there in the mix. The Miata driver there, and he's one you gotta make sure you keep an eye on him because he could help your fantasy lineup big time. And then Alex Labay, the monsoon race at the Charlotte Roval was in a DGM car. right there in the mix, going for the races that you're passing a lot of these top teams and top drivers out there. I think it's one of those teams that just doesn't get the respect that it deserves, and a lot of these broadcasters, I guess perhaps Steve in this case, just don't notice this team enough to notice that they've had these good runs in recent memory, and not even that long ago. And sometimes they even get good runs on the super speedways or runs on the short tracks and get some good performances. I think that's one thing that was overlooked. So again, to hear it's the deception that is the thing that keeps me bringing this topic up over and over again. That they won't just say these Cup guys are in there because, okay, yeah, they're getting some extra laps. They're going to make them, maybe it's going to help them in the Cup Series race. But in the meantime, if they can get another trophy, great. But they never talk about it that way. It's always like, oh, this needs to happen. This needs to happen. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Like, I think what needs to happen is at the same time, you got to have these Xfinity drivers that are trying to develop their own skills. And they're not going to learn anything from finishing third in a race. They're going to learn from winning a race, because the sponsors, I'll bet you, don't care if they finish third behind two Cup Series guys. It's like, did you win the race? Is my car going to be on the front page of the newspaper, or the website or whatever it is? I'm betraying my own age again here in this example, but you take my point. I mean, that's kind of the other part of it. So I actually have an article that I'm still working on. I've been sitting on it since I did the original, my latest spiel on the situation there with these Cup guys running in the Xfinity Series. And I think finally I have like the last remaining jigsaw piece that's going to fit all that together. So I'm not sure what the timetable is on that. We're kind of working on a couple other things here. But that's something else I'm looking at here. I don't want to hit the hammer too many times on tonight's show, because I know I do it plenty of times on here. But that just irritated the heck out of me. I mean, they're just like, oh my gosh, look how good the 92 car's doing. And it's like, look, they've had some great runs with their own guys, and it just doesn't get talked about. The connection is not made. It's like we're almost there, we're there, and then all of a sudden we're gonna go, we're here. Okay, it's like, no, hang on. It's like, reel that back in. You're on the right track. You're saying like, okay, these guys are getting in there, but just absurd. And then and to treat these other Cup guys that have moved back into the Xfinity Series, not because they're in there trying to get like an easy win, but because they're in a difficult position in their career. Guys like J.J. Yaley, guys like, Ty Dillon, we've seen here and there. Even in this particular race, guys like that are trying to get, just get their feet back under them because they're in a difficult position in their careers. Those are Cup Series drivers. Where is, if it's so important to have Cup Series guys in there, you already do. So why do we need somebody else that's even better and is going to just utterly destroy the field? I mean, you had 6 Cup Series regulars, including Ty Dillon, to be fair, that all qualified for this race, and you had 4 teams that missed the show. All 6 of the regulars made it in, and then 4 guys got bumped out, including all of Motorsports Business Management, including Brad Perez. I'd like to say friend of the show, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, that's too presumptuous for me to say, but I mean, certainly we sponsored him at Sears Point. I hated seeing him miss the show. I was looking forward to see what he could do in the 13, and I think in a race that was crazy enough like this, he probably could have made something happen. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait on it again. Mason Philippi, same thing. Guy we talked about back over at Sonoma. Drove from San Francisco to Indianapolis in less than 3 days with him and a friend of himself over there, getting out there. Had to go home, not qualifying a car that had a bunch of fans' names on it. Brought back a new version of the brick car like Brett Bodine had in 2003. And then Josh Williams, mentioned him. Again, another driver that you would expect to be in the Xfinity Series, of course, from his ARCA experience and the great runs he's had with DGM, misses the show. It doesn't get a chance to go for it there. All in place of what? I mean, again, if you're having all these other Cup Series guys in there and having the Hendrick Motorsports entry, just absurd. I think it's just so, it's so needless. I mean, you're all during the same time period where you have like the simulator that's set up, and you have simulators like, oh, these simulators are fantastic. Like they help drivers really get ready. But oh no, the simulators aren't good enough for the Cup guys, even though the Cup guys are still the best drivers in the sport. Like, no. They actually need to be in the Xfinity Series to get better laps under them, even though the Xfinity cars are nothing like the Cup cars now. Like it's all built on so many contradictions, and nobody's willing to unpack it. They just kind of hear that and they're like, oh yeah, of course we need them there. Stupid. I think you could have a fantastic race as we have had with 38 Xfinity Series regulars, including some drivers that again have been in the Cup Series or have Cup experience. Kaz Grala has Cup experience. Guys like that. I mean, it's you can have that in there without shoehorning these other people there. I mean, look at the top five. You got AJ Allmendinger. Okay, he gets back in there. I mean, he's just part-time in the Cup Series. He's, of course, going for the Xfinity Championship. Then you have Alex Bowman in the Hendrick entry. You get Allgaier, who's been tearing up the stages and everything this season, still gets into the third spot. And then you got Ross Chastain, you got Chase Briscoe up there. It's just absurd. I mean, it's that whole situation there where they just don't need to be there. I mean, would that have changed the outcome and Allmendinger still would have won? I mean, yeah, that would have still happened. But maybe we would have had a better race between Allgaier going after Allmendinger. I don't know. But unfortunately, this is just kind of the trajectory. They're determined to keep the sport, and it's an outmoded concept. I know it's outmoded because of rule changes, but if they just need to follow the path that they've already set for themselves. So I don't know. I may dig into that more in the article I'm working on here, but that's something else I'm looking at here. But that's another story for another day. I know there was a bit of controversy a little bit in that race this morning. I know there was a discussion there that apparently Miguel Paludo took exception to something that happened with the Alpha Prime Racing team. Tommy Joe Martins, to his credit, was very quick to post and said, look, I talked with my crew members. I don't know what the heck he's talking about. So I'm inclined to believe Tommy in this situation here. I don't know if there's a situation where, the last thing you need is like the part-timers in the Xfinity Series and the Xfinity Series regulars to have any kind of infighting between each other. That would be a different situation there too. But I don't know. I hopefully it's nothing more going on there with that. But I think that's a different story there too. But yeah, definitely check out Tommy Joe Martin's Twitter if you haven't already. I think he has a very good, concise Kenny Wallace style video there that kind of breaks down what was going on there with Miguel there after the Xfinity Series race. Alrighty. So on the subject of things I'm working on here at the same time, I want to kind of touch on this here before we get into show and tell and our trivia segment, and then any other questions you guys have here along the way. I'll probably browse the chat here a little bit and see what else comes up here at the same time. Big thing this weekend is I have a working draft pretty much done for the Stanton Barrett video, the next episode of Rise of the Field Fillers. I was able to integrate the interviews that I've completed on this. I really was kind of trying to get that fleshed out. It really kind of helped. I felt the second half of it. I think the opening of it was more or less the same, but I think this will really tie it together. What I'm in the process of doing now is now submitting it over to Stanton and kind of brushing it up with him to make sure I got some of the details correct, because he's very particular about aspects of his career. And I think it'll be an easier way to kind of follow up on some topics that maybe I kind of graze in there and that he can kind of elaborate more on. So I think that'll make a better video once it's completed there. So I'm very much looking forward to getting that done. And luckily I got these other scripts. I have at least 2 other scripts that are in the back pocket here. Those are pretty much set up too. So my plan is once this Barrett one gets done, I'm going to get that one back, get these other ones recorded. Probably get these other 2 recorded in the meantime while I get that one processed, and then record that one. And then it's just going to become like an assembly line over here and getting all that stuff done. I know it's been a long wait, but I am working on some more content here. And my big goal here is to get a lot of that up, if not all of it, before we do our next trackside coverage at Las Vegas in October. So that remains the goal here at this point. I don't think it's going to take that long, frankly, because that's not until mid-October. But it's already August tomorrow, so I know time goes by. So that's kind of what we're looking at here in the meantime. Another thing I want to talk about, too, one thing I was very impressed with was Mike Joy's appearance on the Dale Jr. Download. I thought he did a fantastic job on that. If you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend it, especially if you have any interest in the craft of being a broadcaster. I thought he offered some extremely sage advice about just the way that you engage with an audience. And also, really, I thought the way he played off Dale Jr. in that interview and talking about, what you need to be when you're a color analyst, when you're not the main guy, but when you're one of the other guys in the booth, what you need to be, and examples from people like, like Benny Parsons and like these others in the past too. So, that would be a different one to kind of look at too. So, that would be kind of an interesting one to work at the same time. But yeah, I think that would be kind of a fun, a fun thing to listen to. I was really enjoying listening to it this week. Mike has always been, he always is like, a very calm voice in the booth, and a very, and I think he's just living his best life. He's always having the most fun there, which is great. I know he gets some criticism from making mistakes about that, and I think he's very transparent about, like, things where times where he misspeaks. I was encouraged actually in one part of it that he mentioned he gets Christopher Bell and Eric Jones messed up in the 20 car. I do that constantly too, so it was refreshing not being the only one. But the way he talks with Dale Jr. about it is Jr. expressing kind of some of his, you know, concerns about his own approach in the booth for NBC, and kind of calming those a bit. Some of them through logically, because of course, Dale Jr., I mean, they're not going to get him out of the booth, for God's sake. He's Dale Jr. I mean, he's lived all this stuff, as Mike Davis found out pretty quickly. But, the situation on that, I think will be handled pretty well there too. So, yeah, I really enjoyed that. I was serious. I tweeted it the other day. I think one thing Mike Joy should consider, if he hasn't done it already, is really being a teacher, teaching broadcasting and doing that. I think his classes would be, really worth, anything that people, could get for him there on that. So I don't know if he's done it. I know Bob Jenkins looked into it before he passed. But obviously Mike, I think right now is just looking at just doing what he is at, on the broadcasts, and, sticking with that. So that's kind of been the aspect there too. Other topics here too. The other big story that came up this week here, Camping World apparently leaving his sponsor for the NASCAR Truck Series, and unbelievably, the lead candidate, at least for the initial post, I think it was Dustin that posted this, that the lead candidate is Craftsman, coming back as they had when the Craftsman Truck Series was in its heyday from the start of the Super Truck era and all that. Potentially coming back, and it just sounds right again. The Craftsman Truck Series, still kind of call it that here and there, in much like a Twin 125s kind of way. It's, I think Marcus Lemonis has done a lot of good in the sport. I think, unfortunately, there's been some things that have been kind of misconnections along the way too. Certainly, if you listen to the Scene Vault, you know what I'm referring to in that case. I think when he did the sponsorship for a lot of the small teams, Tom Bodine's march to 800 starts that just wrapped up here recently, I think there's been a lot of good there too, and I don't feel like throwing that all out the window there just because there's now this news about them changing hands here. I have certainly not been shy about criticizing the Truck Series broadcast, although I do think this week's was significantly better. I think a lot of that was helped by the racing and the camera work. Yeah, I think that if there is a change there, and it sounds like there's going to be, hopefully the series is able to keep going, and they could, if it is a return to the old branding from the Craftsman time period, maybe that's something else that kind of keeps that going too. But that's that's kind of that's a big story. That is a big story. Title sponsorship has of course been a big issue. Cup Series still doesn't have one single sponsor. That's basically just the Cup Series nowadays. So but that's definitely another one to talk about. Another one I want to let me make sure I mentioned the right Twitter feed on this here as well. Let me get this here. I hope you guys have enjoyed some of the bonus content that we had on here at the same time there. We had some more bonus content this week. The IndyCar race content from our William Saki, who's covering the IndyCar side of it, and then we had the ARCA feature this past week that both William as well as our guest contributor Ben Schneider were working on together, and got that one up this week there. So still get some other content for the lower series as well, and so I definitely hope you've been enjoying that stuff as well. We'll get the Cup Series article here later tonight and going into this weekend. Another thing I want to talk about here, This past week, I posted that tweet. I sometimes forget how many people are watching stuff I post on Twitter. There's a lot of times, and I think this is a thing that I know kind of gets people in trouble sometimes. It's like I just kind of put stuff out there. If it's something I feel like I kind of like to bounce off people, like I'll put it out there. And there's not too much that I feel like sharing kind of outside of that, or if it's something that's kind of silly that's NASCAR related, I'll feel like bringing it up there. But we did cross just the 7,000 follower mark there this week. Big thanks to you guys for following up on that. But I thought it was funny posting the picture about the eBay auction there with the 2,000 die casts on that. And I was just kind of posted. I was like, I didn't know those existed before, when they had like die casts of like Stacey Compton's car from 2000 and Kenny Irwin's Busch car. But what surprised me and honestly touched me was a couple of people got a hold of me and says, "Hey, I got that. I'll send it to you." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" Like I wasn't thinking that. But big thanks to the people that reached out there as well. I know Justin was one of you guys there. And I had Frank Villat here that follows the account there as well, was another person who reached out. I hope you don't mind me mentioning you guys names on here, because I'm sure you guys are here in the chat here as well, or at least have been in the past. But I really do appreciate it. That was really kind. I think social media. I mean, there's a lot of negatives to social media, and sometimes it gets kind of out of control sometimes. But there is a nice side of it too. And, it was kind of reminded on that. It didn't have to be something, that particular to me there in that case, but I really did appreciate that. I thought that was really cool. So, you guys are cool viewers out there and fans. I do appreciate that. And actually, I was kind of thinking, I saw the comment at the start of this here about, what was it? The Brock Maniacs. I saw that from the 8206 there on that. You actually got me an idea, because I was thinking about something like name for like the group or like the chat, because I know the kids these days, I'm just too old to think about this in the same context. I got to come up with some kind of name for the group or the chat. And I was also thinking, it tickled me, but I don't know if it's good enough. It's like, I was thinking, it's like, hey, how about the Brock markers? Like, I don't know. Is that too on the nose? Like instead of back markers? I don't know. Something like that. Something that kind of ties in the last place finish thing, and then like a group name. I don't know. Maybe we'll workshop that in the future, but I'm kind of thinking of that. Because I like the idea of having some, because we got a nice group here, and I really enjoy going over the races here with you guys each week. And we have a lot of returning people. At Beast of Metal, my goodness, you've been here from the start of this, back during the disqualification show and everything. And I know you've been doing a good job with the moderation and everything, so I do appreciate that, and all that. So yeah, Brock markers. If you're thinking about that, I don't know. That's the closest I've gotten, but maybe I'll think of something better further down the line there as well. So we're going to do our trivia section here, and we'll do our show and tell here as well. And then anything else you guys want to talk about, or any questions you may have about the racing this weekend, we'll certainly get into that as well for the show tonight. What we'll do is, again, we'll bring our 1990s Trivial Pursuit device out here, and we'll do some questions on this. I might browse. There we go. Just look at some of the chat comments here too. I like that. There we go. All right, well, here we go. Yeah, so we'll pick the category here, and while you guys are picking the categories, we'll do the show and tell segment here. Again, the categories, for those of you new to the show here, are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are your categories. Go ahead and vote in the comments here which category you'd like, and we'll go ahead, whichever one gets the most votes, we'll do that for the show here tonight. Again, the categories are, think of it in like Jeopardy categories here: NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are our categories here this time around. Okay. Yeah, no tires, just gas. I saw you were anxious for the for trivia, but we're certainly gonna do that too. Yeah. Oh, I remember there was speaking of which, I think there was a super chat from last week that was asking, or no, just a discussion about the Clint Boyer video that Slap Shoes did. Yeah, I thought that was pretty good. It was interesting how he was doing kind of the John Boys thing. There was definitely an influence there of doing kind of the Dorktown angle. I think a lot of sports channels are kind of trying to jump on that kind of angle because that channel's been so successful, and rightfully so. Love the graphical work and the research that they do over there. Um, I John comes off a little strange to me sometimes. I think some of the I don't see eye to eye with John on everything. I'll just put it that way. But I do think that the passion is there, and I think it comes across. And in Slap Shoes, yeah, I think he jumped on the same strategy quite well, and really just kind of pointing out how bizarre of a character Clint Boyer is. I won't spoil the video for those of you who haven't seen it yet, but yeah, I thought it was quite good, and I thought it was a good decision to kind of wait on it after, of course, the news came out from Gateway. I know he had to sit on it for a bit, and I know how challenging that is when you're making videos and you want to share them as soon as possible. But yeah, I thought that was pretty good. So I enjoyed watching that. It was kind of a good follow up to some of the. It kind of provided better context to some of the stuff we saw in the Elk Lemon video, talking about the road rage incidents that Boyer found himself in the middle of it. The beard trimmings. Oh goodness, there you go. The weird beards. I think my dad had that nickname at one point. The Brock fillers. There you go. I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of them. We'll figure something out. I mean, I'm sure you guys will figure it out. It'll come up organically when we find like the right one. I think that would be a good one to we'll kind of go with the Pennzoil Truck series. Yeah. So we'll see what happens here. Your official last place finisher. Oh, we have a call here. Let's see if we have a call. We might. And then we'll find out here. I'll check Pockers' page. Yes, 2 minutes ago, Bob Pockers, tech complete, no issues. Tyler Reddick is the winner. So, and that's all the tweet says. We don't have any information about R&D or anything like, anything like that. Okay, and Pockers also posting the indicator about the 30-second penalty for cutting some of the turns there too. So, okay. Yes, so officially, yes, Tyler Reddick now has 2 career Cup Series wins, both on the road courses. And we're going to have Eric Almirola now with his 15th career last place finish, his first on a road course. So that will be coming up here later tonight. How about calling the chat the mobile chicanes? I don't know, I like that, but then there's that one channel that I just subscribed to that I think calls himself the mobile chicane. That might be confusing there too. So that was pretty good there. But yeah, no last place drama here, at least post-race last place drama tonight. But who knows? Michigan's a downforce track. We might, maybe things will come up there. I'm not sure. What's the top category? I'm seeing a few for NASCAR. I'll let Beast of Metal, if you could total those up. Okay, 1 vote per person. Yeah, I'm with Beast of Metal. Yeah, 1 vote per person if you can. If it's unintentional, yeah, you can change your other one. You can delete your old one and put a new one up there. That's fine. But yeah, let me know, Beast of Metal, with what's the leader, and we'll do our show and tell segment here. So for our show and tell segment, had this come in just the other day. I wasn't sure it was going to come in until next week, but I definitely did want to share it on the show tonight because it does have some relevance. Man, this microphone is really sensitive to stuff moving around. Okay. Put this down here. So, last year, we talked about Josh Bilicki and very nearly getting a 18th place finish as he had in this race last year. And if you remember correctly, he actually had a very distinctive paint job in this race last year when he was driving for Rick Ware Racing. And I have since pulled the trigger on this. This came up on Facebook, and I thought it was kind of interesting that the folks over at Insurance King actually helped expedite these orders. They have now made a diecast of the number 52 Saved by the Bell tribute car. That was, of course, honoring the life of, what was the person there? Was Dustin Diamond there in their process there. I didn't grow up watching the show, so I always have to make sure I don't say the name incorrectly. But here it is, yes, the 24 scale of the number 52 car that finished 18th in the Indy road course race just last year. The famous 52 car that seemed to come up from 1 week to the next, either in the last car articles or just at the front of the field. I thought they did a wonderful job on this one here. This is a scheme I was hoping that they produced it last year, but I kind of gave up the thought of it there at the time. But then it came back up in the discussions there, and they actually had the folks over there at Insurance King help sell them from from their website. Actually, I had a person that contacted there, and yeah, so I was able to pull that in. I don't do too many 24th scale ones here, but this was too good to pass up. Especially again, a team that doesn't get talked about that much. Not a last place finisher, an 18th place finisher, but a good run for Bilicki. And Bilicki again, I may be presumptuous to say, a friend of the show there, but very friendly. I appreciated him introducing me to some of his friends there at Phoenix last year. Be very happy to have some of the Bilicki's there here at LASTBRO headquarters. So definitely wanted to jump on the opportunity there on that. Very nice detail on this one. I'll bring the camera down so you can kind of see it a little bit better here. I know the light doesn't capture it quite that well, but yeah, I think they did. I think they did a pretty nice job on there. Even some of the other contingencies and smaller sponsors there on the side. So yeah, and again, the numbers in the proper position and everything too, with the old Cup Series Gen 6 cars and everything too. But yeah, pretty limited release that they did of it there too. I think it was like 800 that they made. They also threw in this postcard here of his throwback scheme for Alpha Prime Racing. So we got that on that there as well. So too good of an opportunity to pass up. I don't usually pull the trigger on it, but I couldn't help to do so when I heard about that there. And so definitely wanted to show that tonight with the same weekend here as the Indy Road Course race with the scheme ran last year. So that's for our show and tell segment. I was hoping they did 64 scale. I haven't seen that from there, but I'm sure they had like something going on with that there too. So let's see. 5 for NASCAR, 3 for teams. Vote remains open. We'll go ahead and close the vote here. So it looks like NASCAR is going to be the winner on that category there. So yeah, so we'll start with that, and we'll do a couple questions here to wrap up the show here for this evening. So let's get here. Alrighty. Okay, so again, keep in mind, for those of you who are new to the show here, we got 69 people in here, nice. So we have the late 90s Trivial Pursuit thing. The answers to these questions, therefore, are not probably going to have people like Kyle Busch or Bubba Wallace as part of the discussion. But it is going to be more like, late 90s questions. Some of these questions are timeless, but others are not. And this first one, I think, is going to be one of the latter here. First question is, who is NASCAR's vice president for marketing and Big Bill France's grandson? Who is NASCAR's vice president for marketing and Big Bill France's grandson? That is our first question for the evening. Alrighty. That to be the 45-second club. There you go. There's another one. Or the 15-second club. Yeah, 45s would be even slower. There's a lot you can go. There's a lot of directions we could go with it, but I'm sure we'll have to come up with something. I might have to peruse the Patreon on that as well. Who is NASCAR's vice president for marketing and Big Bill France's grandson? Alrighty. Who is NASCAR's vice president for marketing and Big Bill France's grandson? Seems like his microphone's getting more sensitive. That's weird. I'm hearing it differently in the microphone. I'm still figuring this thing out here. I'm very happy with the way this sounds. I did a test with it with one of the other scripts. I just recorded the opening on it. I'm hopeful this is doing it because I think that might be the one thing that's holding the channel back a little bit is the audio. I was listening to a lot of other people's channels and the audio quality sounds a bit different. And I think I think that's kind of the great equalizer out there. So, it's kind of trippy. There's got functions on this thing where I can play stuff on the phone and on the computer because I'd like to have a visual aspect on this show too. I know we've been playing around with that for a while. Like we could pull up the results literally, or maybe like Twitter videos of stuff that was happening in the race. Like if there's a big fight, we can just play it on here, then talk about it or point at things on the screen. I think that's something that we can kind of get down here. But I think we have the infrastructure now to kind of get that going. So one of the other things we have kind of in mind here. So that'll be something we'll look at. Yeah. I think when I was right in front of the mic, that might have increased the sensitivity a bit. I'll be curious to hear how this sounds after it finishes recording tonight. Reading the question again here. Who is NASCAR's vice president for marketing and Big Bill France's grandson? Rockbeard's Grocery Getters. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I like something like that where it could maybe be something we could make like a graphic out of or something like that. That'd be kind of fun. Yeah, Jimmy Means' Grocery Getters. That kind of thing. Who is NASCAR's vice president for marketing and Big Bill France's grandson? I mean, ultimately, it has to sound good to you guys because I mean, you're you guys there. So we'll figure something else there. Alrighty. Who is NASCAR's vice president for marketing and Big Bill France's grandson? The DNF dudes. There you go. I mean, I don't know if we have some female viewers in here. I'm not sure if they'd be on board with that, but maybe, we'll see. We could workshop it here. We'll figure that out. Who is NASCAR's vice president for marketing and Big Bill France's grandson? The answer is indeed our good buddy Brian France. Brian France, indeed. So late 90s, different time period there for sure. Brian France, the correct answer. Next question. What race-related merchandise sells the most items? Ooh. Now that okay, we're getting some good. This is a good pick on the category, folks. We get some good questions here. What race-related merchandise sells the most items? There we go. Looking at some of the other comments here. Yeah, no tires, just gas. I saw you brought up about Brett Moffitt losing his ride due to a lack of funding. Yeah, that's sad too. I mean, there's so much of that happening, and we've seen so many teams in the Xfinity series in particular really kind of scale back their programs or do point swaps because they can't keep going, and then they try to bring some other team in. The 13 teams had that to kind of get them going. We were going to have 2 Emerling Gase cars, but then we just had the one. It sounds like they're going to try to get back to 2 again next year. But, they're going to have to figure out, the mechanical issues like they had with Kligerman this weekend, especially if it's going to keep having more road course races. Allow teams to test on Cup Series tracks. Yeah, maybe. I mean, there's an idea, RD Fox, kind of look at each other ones here. Let's see. No one's happy but first. Yeah, exactly. Alrighty. What race-related merchandise sells the most items? I mean, there's a lot of different options. I mean, it could be something bizarre, like maybe these koozies, like I have this cup in, but usually they give those away. Not like the rubber ones here, but like the other ones. But that would be another option there too. What race-related merchandise sells the most items? The answer is, and the phrase used here is toy cars. Toy cars. But if you guess like, diecast or 64th or 24th, you're absolutely right on that one. Toy cars is the correct answer. I guess per unit, that would be the one. Because, I mean, then you're generally going to have like a group like that. Joey Fairbanks, you were the first one with diecasts. Matthew Watkins A, you did as well. Bumper stickers, live chicken, my goodness. We were just at the county fair last night, so we had some live chickens out there, but I'm not sure if that would be something so much at the racetrack. Bumper cars, there you go. T-shirts, if its designs are cool, and cash cows for tracks, teams, and drivers. Yeah, I mean, T-shirts are a good guess. I mean, you could certainly, I mean, I could see either you have a driver that you like, and people have multiple shirts, maybe the paint scheme changes each time, but then diecast, you have the thing where, again, something like the Blicky one here, where you find like, maybe it's a driver you don't follow, it's like a particular scheme you're looking for. Even in the late 90s, that would be the case. But, yeah. Very tickled with this one. The colors, I don't know how well the colors show up on screen here, but it's really nicely done. So we're gonna have to find a permanent place for a few things here, but we're gonna definitely add this one to the whole montage there. Really thought they did a nice job on that. Got the roof flaps come up on it too. Again, I really don't do 24th that often. But I don't know if Brad Perez's truck got produced or not. I guess that's another one that, but we're not going to know about that for, I guess, a few months. What driver was champ both years NASCAR ran a modified special division? Let me read this again. What driver was champ both years NASCAR ran a modified special division? That's our next question. Hope you guys liked the shot of the George Jetson cars as well. Another of my favorite paint schemes there on the number 9 car for the Cartoon Network car that Jerry Nadeau ran back in the late 90s. Yeah, I remember seeing that at Sears Point back in the day. I got to pull up one of those pictures. I know I posted it a while back, but I'll probably repost it again and see if I can find that and cover that at the same time. Let me read the question again here. What driver was champ both years NASCAR ran a modified special division? That is a question. Oh gosh, just make sure I unmuted that from earlier. Is it? It's kind of outside the range. Can I let's turn that up a little bit? I don't want to turn it up too much. Let me mess with this a little bit. Okay, there's one. Okay, that's a little too loud. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. That's a little bit. It sounds loud on the headphones. I don't want it to be blowing anybody's ears out here. Yeah, today is George Jetson's birthday, believe it or not. I think that's hilarious. Like, literally, he was literally born. I mean, kudos to whoever found that. I'm glad somebody found that before the day of. So, like, we can laugh about it now. Because I think, like, it's like, oh, wait, he was born yesterday. Yeah, I thought that was hilarious. I was just looking at that at lunch the other day, and I had to definitely send that to LASTBRO with the since his birthday is today too. We'll be wrapping up here pretty soon for that as well. Let me read the question one more time here again. What driver was champ both years NASCAR ran a modified special division? The answer is Bobby Allison. Bobby Allison. So any of you guys guessed Bobby Labonte, you're very close. Bobby Allison is the correct answer. I guess it's for Richie Evans, Todd Bodine, Brett Byron, Manuel Neuer. Manure, that's what it sounds like. I'm sure that's intentional. JD McDuffie, Jeff Bodine, Judy Jetson. Nope, not quite. Not Larry Zbzinko. Larry Zazinko. I'm going to choose to believe the B is on there. Yes, rest in peace, Pat Carroll. Absolutely. There's also that, yeah. Alrighty. Okay, here we go. We'll do one more question here for tonight. We'll wrap up. Well, I was about to say a little bit earlier, but we're almost at the 2-hour mark. But thank you so much, everyone, for staying tuned here. Last question here for the evening here, folks. What company offered a $50,000 award for the 1998 Engine Builder of the Year? What company offered a $50,000 award for the 1998 Engine Builder of the Year? So we're looking for a company name. It's Kyle Larson's birthday, too. Exactly. It's the day Paul Menard. That's why I saw some comments on this. Yep, that's why I was wearing Paul Menard's shirt today. The winner of the 2011 Brickyard 400, which was run on this day, July 31st. We did not have Zabisco. Oh, I wouldn't have guessed that. Zabisco. So it's the second Z that's silent. Zabisco. I guess the Z lengthens that. It's a tricky one. Okay, again, reading the last question for the evening. What company offered a $50,000 award for the 1998 Engine Builder of the Year? This is the question here. So we're looking for a company name. That is the answer. What company offered a $50,000 award for the 1998 Engine Builder of the Year? The other thing I really like with this setup here is that I used to have to move one of the headphone earbuds forward. You probably notice it on some of the older shows because I like to actually hear my voice instead of hearing just a muffled version of it. But now this is that setup where it's actually playing it back to you in live time, so there's no delay and I can actually hear it. That I didn't think I would need that function that much, but that helps. So hopefully this will help in the long term. That's what we're looking for. Looking for setup there on that. What company offered a $50,000 award for the 1998 Engine Builder of the Year? It's actually Whistler, but hey, bro. Huh. Okay, that makes sense. Alrighty, here we go. Last question here for tonight. What company offered a $50,000 award for the 1998 Engine Builder of the Year? The answer is A.E. Clevitt. A.E. Clevitt. I think a few of you guys guessed Clevitt on here, but I would count that there. It says A.E. Clevitt. I didn't think it had a full name. I don't think it's R.E. Clevitt. It's hard to tell. Because it's, I mean, with the digital screen, it's got kind of that analog look to it there. It's either A.E. Clevitt or R.E. Clevitt. But Clevitt is indeed the correct answer. A few of you got that one there. Maserati 9, I believe you were the first one there. Yes, Maserati 9, Bean Boy 89, you got it. Said Head 2. Yeah, there we go. Alrighty. Yeah, what's the Clevitt company do? Yeah, apparently something with engines. I think it's I don't know if it's engine building or engine parts. I think that name sounds familiar. I can picture the logo for sure. But yeah. Alrighty. Okay, so that will do it for the show this evening. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Congratulations to Tyler Reddick on his win today at the Indianapolis Grand Prix circuit. Your last place finisher, Eric Almirola, 15th last place finish of his season. The article for that race will be available later tonight. In the meantime, it is at LastCar on Brock is my Twitter feed. Patreon.com/LastCar on Brock is my Patreon if you are interested in that. Or this channel right here. We got other content here and more content coming up in the near future. Our next show is going to be after the Michigan weekend next week, namely after the Sunday race for the Cup Series, pending, of course, weather. It will be after whenever that race is run, more than likely going to be next Sunday. So we'll go from there, and we'll find out as we take one more step towards the Cup Series playoffs, what the next big story is. So thank you much. Thank you, everyone, for showing up here for tonight. Again, happy birthday to LASTBRO, as well as happy birthday to George Jetson, I guess, as well as Kyle Larson. Big day, July 31st turned out to be. So there we go. So have a great week, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.